All right, welcome to Morally Loaded. My name is Kay, and we also have Off My Chest, Tally. Tally?
Yes, welcome to Off My Chest as well with Tollybots. Kay and I, you've probably seen us in your comment section, in your live chat. You might have seen me on some of the panels. And the two of us have been chatting off stream, talking about culture, about politics, about this particular moment that we find ourselves in. And so we decided to have this conversation publicly. So, welcome to both of our channels.
Yes, welcome. And I think today we just wanted to kind of introduce ourselves, like how we got here, what our backstories are, what brought us to, I don't know, kind of having maybe some ideological shifts or some, changes in our worldviews or the framework with which we make sense of things. So try and put that out there and see if that fills in some, some questions or some blanks that might be out there.
I was just watching a Red Scare podcast, so you can think of us as like the more earnest, less black pilled version.
I have not listened to that podcast, but I will take your.
I don't listen to it either, really. I follow like Anna on Twitter, and they just posted their Nick Fuentes interview, so I just started watching that.
Oh, was it as I don't know, glowing and softball as everybody else, or did they push a little bit?
Yeah, no. I haven't finished it, to be fair. I haven't finished it all the way through, but it might even be more embarrassing. I don't know. I guess they get it out because they're not like, they don't have a decades long career of journalism or anything like that they need to uphold. But I don't know. Pretty cringe. That's what I'll say for what I've seen so far.
Yeah, he's certainly having his, another moment. So
you can say that again.
Yeah. So how do you want it? Do you want to start? Do you want me to start? Or do you want to, how are we going to go from here?
Why don't you start? Just because I think
yeah,
everyone who will be watching this from my end has seen me talk about my story, which I will do again here, but maybe just to keep it a little more fresh and interesting, you can start.
Yeah. So I think we've talked, like, over the last few weeks or months about like how both of our shifts happened, and then I guess I started to think about like what really happened. There were some things that happened, like I guess later on, that led me to do some digging, but even before that, it like there were some things that I can like look back on, and notice. So I was very far left for my entire life. I was an anarchist, probably an insurrection anarchist, an accelerationist. Very, very, very far left. And then
is that where the hair color comes from?
Well, I'm not sure. I was a makeup artist and a hairdresser, and I had all the colors of hair, and I still have a little bit of punk left in me, but I think
so it's the spunkiness that did both. Yeah, it led to the hair color and to the anarchy. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. And I was attracted to leftist politics, I think, in the beginning, because I was really I really believed fundamentally in like not dehumanizing people, and that was like one of the main things that brought me to like the leftist politics. Anyways, I think even in like the early 2010s, when we had like the very beginnings of cancel culture, before it was cancel culture, like the call out culture and all that, that moved into cancel culture, that always irked me. Also, I found like just yelling at people incessantly to get them to change their views and berating people was not a very effective means of, like, I don't know, producing change in people. So that's one thing I can look back on and definitely see that I started, there were some places where I started to part with, I guess, the tactics, and then sometime, I think in like 2019, 2020, during COVID, I started seeing just how people were treating each other. And just that kind of like really opened my eyes. Like people were mocking people were like people who were scared to get the vaccine, and whether they should be or shouldn't be, there was like earnest fear, and just like laughing at people and deriding them, and kind of like having no compassion for anyone. It seemed, I don't know, it, it wasn't how I would like approach the situation, you know. And then where else? So I'm trying to think back. It's like so long ago, but
yeah,
a lot of this, like this all happened, I guess, in that period of time. This all was happening online because we were all like locked inside. So
yeah,
I started seeing like a lot of that. And then a lot of like, I had like 2 babies during COVID. So I was in a lot of like mom groups and forums and online a lot. And just people were starting to be, I don't know, there was a lot of like going no contact with family. There were a lot of people using COVID boundaries as like ways to kind of like force people to do what they wanted. So it wasn't like they were using boundaries as ways of like manipulation and control. And so I started seeing this all like around these times. And I don't know, this felt, there was like a very like authoritarian kind of do what we want you to do feeling in the air, you know,
right.
around then. And this is all happening. And I guess sometime around 2020, 2021, somebody who I talked to a lot would just keep telling me, like, who was also very left, would just keep telling me like little bits of news or little things here and there that were just like, they just didn't sit right with me. Like they were like, they just felt so unreal. I forget what it was. And one of them, he was saying something to the effect of like, oh, Jordan Peterson is saying he would have been a Nazi or something. And I was like, that can't be true. Like, this is just like, there's just no way that this is the, you know what I mean?
What a bastardization. I already know what this person was referencing, and what a bastardization of what Jordan Peterson's message is in that type of lecture.
Yeah. So that was one of the first things that I was like, okay, I'm going to go look this up. And then I looked that up, and then I saw what he had actually said. And I was like, oh, he's actually great. And I listened to a lot of him. And I was like, oh, it seems like everything that I was like, you know, under the understanding of with who he was and everything he said was completely like misinformed.
Yeah.
And there were a few more little things like that. And then I just started having this, like, I was like, I don't understand the other side of these arguments at all for the most part. And I spent like probably a year or a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, just listening to a lot of right wing voices and conservative voices. Just like fundamentally curious as to how they explain themselves in their own words. Because everything up until then that I had been, like my understanding had been fed through, you know, like left-wing media bias.
Yeah, filter.
Yeah. And that like that like really changed how I saw and came to understand like a lot of their perspectives and points of view. And it wasn't that I agreed with everything, because there's still a lot of things I don't agree with or I didn't agree with, but I was starting, like, I was able to see them as people, you know, and whereas before I, you know, thought they were evil, which is like, it sounds like, it really, you know how it is. It sounds silly to say now, but you really like put all these people in one camp of bad. And yeah. But then in, you know, in times of like, I guess more like reflection or deeper thought, I was like, well, they can't all be bad, you know, but I was like, but You just kind of
Right.
like hand wave it away and just like, but they're doing all these things. So even if they're, you know, they're not bad or evil, they're like so willfully ignorant or stupid, or they're greedy,
Yes.
or there's some other attribute that's equally that's bad but maybe not evil, you know,
Yeah.
to try and make sense of it. And that's just kind of like what really started, I guess, like pushing me um, in the other direction,
Hmm.
you know.
I relate to that story a lot. Especially what you said there at the end of like having to coming to the conclusion that people on the right are not evil. And yes, it does sound ridiculous. It's very shameful for me. Like it's both funny. Like I kind of sometimes I like to share some of the crazier posts that I had written or things that I had said because it's funny. But it really is shameful the way that I treated people and thought about people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly right. I thought that people who voted Republican, so I'm in the United States, Kay's in Canada, but you know, North America, we kind of share a political brain. And many of the same political consequences. But I believed that Republicans were evil of the sexist, racist, homophobic variety.
Mm-hmm.
And the only exception I made for, like you're saying, well, maybe everyone can't be evil. The only exception that I was able to logically deduce was that the people who aren't racist, sexist, and homophobic are greedy, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like those things, but they're willing to look past it. So they are both greedy and privileged. Privilege was another big thing that I felt like you had to have some level of privilege to be able to not care about these, about racism, about the isms, right? And even my story of how I first started questioning these things, because again, similarly, once I decided that I wanted to see how the other side lives, and once I was like curious in a positive way about what Republicans think and say, then I mean, it was a slow process too. I was watching like Intelligence Squared debates. It was probably a year and a half, 2 year process also for me of like slowly kind of changing my mind on things. But even what brought me there was pretty like not self-centered, but it had to happen to me. So I hear you talk about like COVID and the way the people were being treated. And I'm like, I wish I had the reaction you had because I was just treating people that way. I mean, I wasn't like, I wasn't really like a COVID Nazi, but I felt contempt for people who didn't want to get vaccinated, who were afraid of vaccination. The only exception I made to that, which just to go back to the absolute progressive brain rot, I made an exception for Black people because I was told that Black people have justifiable medical
trauma. Yeah.
Right, medical hesitancy. Now, by the way, anyone could have justifiable medical hesitancy, and also I think, like, you know, I still do believe in our health system, right? Even if it's not, even if it's not perfect. But I felt contempt for those people, and I remember I was waitressing, and yeah, I felt so snide and so like you get a little bit of a rush of putting someone in their place, you know, in the same way that like when I was a far left activist, I was an activist, I was a protester, I loved going to protests, and so much of that is a social experience, in a way that like I can make it sound cringe now, but in a very understandable human way. Like you're connecting with people who you share these values with. It feels really profound, especially when you feel like these things are so important. So it feels really profound. And then you get to feel good about like the counter protesters, or if we were there to counter protest, right, the fascists who are there and the MAGA lovers and all of this. And so it really wasn't until, for me, the summer of 2021, which was the last sort of small war between Israel and Gaza, and at that point, the like activist groups that I had been working in, just kind of turned on me, basically, because I was an out Zionist, which that word already was starting to have a pretty strong negative connotation on the left. Nowhere near as strong as in the last 2 years since October 7th. But I spent my time in the far left spaces, and so those spaces were already pretty radicalized.
Yeah.
And so it really took, which again, this is a topic that I think about a lot, that I'd be interested in talking about, but it really took it happening to me, basically.
Mhm.
It took me being burned by, I don't know what to call it, leftism, progressivism, wokeism, whatever pejorative or non-pejorative term people would like. It really took it happening directly to me for me to wake up. Now, to wake up, woke. LOL.
Yeah.
Now it generalized out, right? So it's not like I only became anti-woke about Israel or about Zionism or something like that. It generalized out, and a lot of my views changed.
Mhm.
And that's something that's also, I think, hard for some people to understand. In a lot of like the YouTube interviews and stuff that I've done with like the libs on this website, I think people want to straw man it to just be the Israel thing or something.
Yeah.
And even though it's even harder to admit because these people hate all of right-wing thought, it's like, no, that was actually the start. And then I changed a lot of my other beliefs that are totally not related at all to Israel. But, it was like seeing them talk about Zionism as racism and white supremacy and privilege and oppression made me think hard and long about what those terms mean, and made me stop making jokes with white people at the butt of the jokes, and made me really challenge the way that I was viewing the world in this oppressor versus oppressed kind of paradigm. But I say that because, again, for me, it took it happening to me directly. Just seeing other people being treated poorly really wasn't enough, because frankly, I was participating in treating other people poorly. And what I noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed any of this, so I'm kind of curious, but I've noticed a resentment of sorts from some people on the right about people like me, basically. And people, I guess, like Dave Rubin, and all the people before who kind of like have their political turn. And they basically said to me point blank, like, you didn't care when we were the ones, when it was us, straight white men, right? Not to stereotype, but these were the people who were obviously the punching bag of woke. And he's like, and you didn't care until it came to you. And it's like, yeah, that's true. That is true. But that feels very human and normal to me. And so I have a lot of patience for like other people, who come to these things. And it feels kind of obvious, especially if so many of our political beliefs are just kind of absorbed by our family and by our environment. We have no reason to challenge them until it becomes very personal. But yeah, it had to become very personal for me to have my mind peaked at all.
Yeah, I think that's very common. I think like when I talk to people, like often it was something that happened to them or something that they went through or something like somebody extremely close to them. And I don't know that like I never got canceled. I just stopped talking to people though. So like people who would maybe see this many people would just have no idea, because I just stopped, like, I didn't post about it. I just kind of like silently left Facebook where I had a lot of connections, and Instagram, and but I think I use a different X account now. But it wasn't that so much started happening to me, but I started to see something in my kids. So I have 5 kids. I have 2 stepkids and 3 kids. Yeah. And I started to see things that my kids would be saying, and that started also like opening my eyes to things. I have a stepson, and he made comments to the effect of like something about the boys playing and they were being toxic men, or something to that effect, and they were just when I like tried to investigate it, they weren't doing anything particularly wrong. It was just something that he
Well,
had
within
picked
the
up on.
confines of young boy behavior.
Yeah. And I was like, oh fuck, like that's awful. Like you've absorbed this. Like I know you're saying it about them now, but like what do you like I don't know, like what how do you feel like inside if you're attributing very, normal behavior to
Mm-hmm.
other boys? So there was that, like my daughter had some of her own stuff to, but being accused of saying things or doing things and people trying to cancel her when she's 12 years old or something to that effect, which is just like a ridiculous, kind of like a ridiculous thing to do. But the kids kind of like, they see what adults are doing and they follow suit with that.
And the teachers, I mean, and this is not to shit on teachers. Both of my parents, I grew up with 2 public school teachers as my parents. And so I have a lot of reverence for the job. And it's something that I like to teach in that way. Like, I've been an assistant teacher and stuff like that at different points in my life. But teachers' colleges are really radicalized. I mean, a lot of the type of ideology that we're talking about is really like just a straight line through academia, through the university systems,
for sure.
And teachers' colleges are among like the most radical, really, and these are well-intentioned, good, normal, loving people, but it is being explicitly brought into the classroom. So they're picking it up from their parents and also their teachers who they might really admire also.
Yeah, for sure. My daughter had like too much knowledge of like some political aspects at 12 years old than, I would have really thought. And then I guess like I have a 6-year-old son now, but when I was pregnant with him and when he was like newly born, I guess I started to like look at the world very differently having a son because I had just had a daughter for a long time. And I started to look at the world differently, and I started looking at the messaging towards like men and young boys. And I just really didn't, it didn't sit right with me. I felt it was really shitty messaging to send to young boys. And I began to see really how much of a problem that was. And it's funny, like I think I've mentioned this before, there's like a meme about like how men shouldn't have to like have a daughter or a wife to like see the full humanity of a woman, but the irony is I think it took me having a son to like recognize the full humanity of men and to be more want to be more careful and want to be more intentional with the messaging that we're doing with them. And the COVID thing, like it wasn't that I was like perfect on it. I saw myself becoming like controlling. I saw myself feeling superior to others. I was scared of getting vaccinated because I'm scared of getting vaccines in general, but like I did it, but I could understand how somebody would have fear. That wasn't like a hard thing for me to get. But I kind of saw myself like trying to use some of these like rules or restrictions in ways that were not completely, I don't know, they weren't earnest. They were very manipulative when I look at it. And part of that felt really good, and then another part of that, like I was like, this kind of feels really gross also, And I had stopped drinking like been about 7 years now. And so I think that also kind of factors in for me because I drank a lot for a long time before, but suddenly I had like this ability to, I guess, think clearly, consistently. So a lot of like the questions or thoughts that I had, I could like turn them off very easily and not continue down these roads of thought. But then once I stopped drinking, it was just like, oh, like there were things that needed answers or things that needed more exploration, and it wasn't getting answered. And like I think the height of it in the COVID thing was like, I have friends who are nurses and they were mocking people dying of
Mm.
COVID. And I was just like, what the fuck? I like, you might
How
be
did we
in,
get here?
how did you get here? Like, that you're comfortable saying that online, that you're comfortable saying that publicly. And I understand that you're seeing people die and that like you think this is contributing to that. Like I can understand all of the ways that you get to that feeling, but that you feel comfortable mocking somebody who's dying because they've, because they're scared. Like this is it's so far from like a compassionate response or even like seeing somebody else as a human that
Mm-hmm.
I yeah, I started to just I
Mm.
was very primed to be able to walk away after a lot of that,
Yeah. Well, that's such a good point too about the disconnect between like how people on the left see themselves, and obviously people on the left, this is an overgeneralization, it doesn't
Yeah.
apply to everyone. Most of the people in my life are on the left, and they're wonderful, incredible people who I love dearly. Lots of the people that we talk to online here on the left, and they're good people.
For sure.
But for me, at least, and it's not, and I see it as a real problem. There's a gap in the kindness department, and it's become like a meme on the right for them to say about the left now. What do they say? Like, oh, this is the party of love and tolerance, or whatever they say, right? And they've got something there, because you and I have talked about this. Part of what drew us so much to even like radical left-wing politics was like what we felt is like our love for other people and our care for other people and our wanting to protect people and to have people thrive and all of this. And so you feel like you're being like the most sensitive in many ways. And in some ways you're being too sensitive. You're walking on eggshells around people because of the color of their skin, or because of their sexual orientation, or their disability, or, or some type of thing. And so you kind of pedestalize them. And then you are just being really callous and cruel to other people. Like I said, I made a kind of offhand comment before that I stopped making jokes about white people. And that sounds so ridiculous to even say. But it's true, right? It's like, it's, it's on the left. It's like, oh, we don't make racist jokes. We don't punch down. Instead, we punch up. And of course, to go up from a left-wing perspective doesn't actually mean anything about you in particular. It has to do with the classes that you belong to. So if you're white, or if you're a man, or if you're straight, right? If you're rich, if you're any of these things, then you are up, and you are fair game. And it's extremely cruel. And like you said, like the way that they would talk about men and stuff. I mean, again, it's like the left will say, and they have a point right now, like, oh, suddenly the right is the snowflakes, and they do have a point. There are people overreacting and overcompensating on the right, and people, dishing it out who can't take it. All of this is true, and the left can absolutely be cruel, just cruel in the way that they speak about men, in the way that they speak about all of the people who they see as outside of their marginalized community. And it's really sick. I mean, along the lines of what you were saying with your son, now he was making this comment about the other boys. He wasn't even necessarily talking about him. But what it does to the people like us, like your son, who have to sit there and view themselves as part of the problem and the exception to the problem.
Yeah.
And how you make you separate yourself from other people. You are somehow better than them. Whether that, because you're choosing to do the work. Like, you have to acknowledge that, yes, you were born with this original sin too, but you have chosen to do the work,
Yeah.
You're here centering marginalized voices. And so you can just, you can be really horrible and cruel to people who are not marginalized.
Yeah.
And that's bad. And that's part of the stuff that I look back and I cringe on, or cringe about, but it's bad for people's mental health. And I think that was I know that was a big part in the way that I framed it in my mind when I was having this ideological turn. Was just like, because I was a psychology student and a therapist. And I was just like, we're making people sick.
Yeah.
This movement
Yeah.
is making people sick on the
Yeah.
individual level. Like, it is literally bad for an individual person's mental health to be on the lookout for microaggressions, right? To be waiting to be hurt by to be set up to have the expectation that they're going to be hurt by other people or let down by other people, and then to be waiting for it and to be looking for it and to be primed for it. You're making people really, especially people who are already like a little high on neuroticism, you're making them mentally ill. You're making them sick and depressed and anxious.
Yeah.
And then on a societal level, like, our society is really sick, you know, in the way that we communicate with each other and view each other. And frankly, I thought that would be a much more effective message on the left than it was. It got me absolutely nowhere. And I know, like, for the people who know me now on YouTube or whatever, I'm like the Trump voter. But it took a lot to get there. I spent most of the time since my turn in the summer of 2021, most of that time I spent clinging on to the left. Even at a certain point, maybe like a year in or so, where like I really like had ideologically shifted a lot in certain ways to the right. I still felt very at home on the left and wanted the left to improve, and that's what I felt like my priority was. The left to change. I wanted the left to reflect, like recognize. Yeah, I wanted to like shake people. And I just got absolutely nowhere, unfortunately. But that was a big motivator, was just seeing how sick this stuff makes people. It's bad for the soul and the heart and the mind.
Yeah. I started seeing people like really valorize mental illness, I think, like around 2015, 2016, 2017, up until like further into like 2020, even now to some degree. And people started like collecting diagnoses. People were really amping up, putting all their like diagnostics in their bios, really talking about all of their, I don't know, like all of their mental health troubles to a degree that was not like, it was not sincere. Like there's just no way. You know what I mean? And it was used as both like this shield from criticism and a way to escape the label of oppressor, because they couldn't be an oppressor if they had, X, Y, and Z condition, or they had enough mental illness, or they had enough points here, or that their identity somehow allowed them to be a marginalized person. Yeah, and there was a lot of that, and there still is. And then there was just like, I don't know. I started to see like, it's like kind of around the same time as like everybody deciding everybody's like a narcissist, the whole like, I don't know. I just see that like thrown around a lot, and it seems to be like, I don't know, people are going to come at me for this. I see most people online who are like yelling narcissist at other people are themselves narcissists who are you know what I mean? Who end up attacking other people because they don't get what they want. And this is just like kind of like exploded in the last, in the last little while.
You're so right. I don't know how I blocked that out of my memory. I kind of forgot the whole mental illness and bio trend, which is incredible. Just a truly incredible in the absolute worst way, like unbelievable, right? As in like in it, yeah. And I participated in that. I don't remember literally having it in my bio. Although, fuck, I might have had like neurodivergent or something really dumb like that. But I know it was a big way that I saw myself, and a way that I would, in these spaces, like you're saying, like how you communicate yourself to other people, right? And I know that I had done, even just, I remember on social media, I know that I would do posts. Like, I remember, oh my God, it's so cringe. I remember like during COVID at one point, I picked up like COVID hobbies like a lot of people did, right? Like getting plants and like fish and whatever. And I remember like doing a post about like, I don't know, like being like a neurodivergent like just making like that was like the caption, right? It's like, that's how there's like,
Yeah.
well, okay. The second part that I want to get to is there's currency in that.
Yes.
There's currency in it. Like you said, it is a way to make you not the oppressor. There's some things that you can't really control, right? You can't really control your skin color, right? Your race, your ethnicity, your sex. You can control your gender. You can choose to, go gender neutral, and there's levels to that too. And I don't even necessarily mean in the social contagion way, which I do think is a thing. And I'm sure you and I will talk about this during these conversations that we're going to continue to have. But I mean, even beyond the social contagion of people like actually starting to see themselves differently and maybe wanting to change their bodies and stuff, there's a whole extra cohort of people who adopted like the she, they, and they're just essentially woke women. They're not gonna, they'll tell you themselves they're not dysphoric in any way, right? They're not looking for transition. And they might even see that their use of they, them pronouns as they're just more evolved, basically. They use fun pronouns so that the non-binary person in the room won't be the only person to have to say they, them, when we go around and share our pronouns. So it goes back to the feeling of like self-righteousness too. They're almost doing it on behalf of others, but they're doing it to signal. It's a class signal, basically, right? And that is so real, Kay. Again, I'm like triggered when you brought that up. I was like, I really forgot about that. But that it was so real, and it still is real in ways that are again incredible. Like when I come across people still talking this way, I'm just like, that's incredible that didn't die. Like there are still parts of the internet or parts of the world where people are talking like this.
Yeah.
But it leads me to another frustration, and I have many with the left. I feel like that's something that I still can't get people on the left to acknowledge, which is there is currency for identifying as a member of a marginalized group. There just is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel gaslit when I talk about this with people on the left and they try to tell me that there's not. There just is.
Yes, there is currency. And I think also, especially for young people. So I have 3 teenagers, and I can say, like, I've seen in them and, their friends that like these types of things play out. And I think that there's like, one, they're growing up in the world of oppressor and oppressed. And they're teenagers, they're young people. They're fundamentally not oppressors. They have very little power, but they're being told by virtue of the color of their skin or where they live that they are oppressors. And this doesn't make sense to them. There's a very big cognitive dissonance to it. So they are looking to find things to make it make sense as to why they're not. And then I think that they adopt either, like, you see it when they some of it they adopt these mental illnesses, or they suddenly they
or they believe,
or they
believe it.
Yes.
That's the part that I think gets lost too. Or I think that people, or that I always try to reiterate when I'm having these conversations, is like, I'm rarely attributing bad intention or any like nefarious or deception to these people. And I say that because I was a true believer. Even when I was being nasty and self-righteous, it felt like the right thing to do. It felt sincere and all of these things. But sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, just like, yes, they adopt these things. They adopt, like, what is it, like autism to some, like, quirky kids. You know what I mean? It's not just like you're quirky, you have autism, or they have like a DID, dissociative identity disorder, or they do the gender thing where they're non-binary, or they adopt like a trans
or a lot
identity.
of the DID and the gender stuff would go together. People would be talking about having
And to be clear, this is not everybody, but there are people for who this is true, and I'm talking about them. And I could see it a lot in teenagers, because they don't know how to make sense of a world that's telling them that they are oppressors when they have no power and they are not oppressors. And it's a fundamentally bullshit way to see the world.
Well, and back to our like natural disposition that led us to our lives on the left, these people are vulnerable.
Yeah.
These young kids absorbing all of these messages, not wanting to be a bad person, not wanting to be ostracized, right? These are really vulnerable people, especially when we're talking about young people, but even adults. I mean, I think like the chokehold that so much of this ideology or ideologies have had on the culture make a lot of people vulnerable, but especially the young people, like you're saying.
Yeah. And they aren't even, I don't even think that they're always like absorbing messaging. I think sometimes they're just absorbing conclusions. You know what I mean? They don't even understand anything that like supports the conclusions. They're just being handed.
Say more about that.
Well, they're just being handed like the end of the thoughts. They don't understand the worldviews or the theories or any of these things that build them up. And so they just have like a very strong belief in the end of the belief. You know what I mean? Like a gendered soul. They might not understand queer theory and everything that has gone into it or how to make sense of it. That's why a lot of them can't argue it, because they have no idea. They've just been handed the conclusion. They've been handed the conclusion of racism and microaggressions, but they don't fully understand the theories or all the things that go into completely support those things. You know what I mean? So I think that's like for young people in a lot of ways, that's probably a good thing though, right? Because if they don't have
like easier to
they
shed.
don't have, in a way, because if they don't have it, like if they don't have all of it, like all of the, I guess, I don't know if it's education, but all of that knowledge, or you don't even want to call it knowledge, but you know what I mean? All of that information, all of that data, all of those theories, all that down. If they don't have the full understanding of it, they can hold the conclusions tightly, but at a certain point, I think they're easier to walk away from if you don't have the whole, scaffolding that holds it up. You're muted.
Sorry, I muted myself when I was sneezing. That makes sense to me logically. I want that to be true, so I don't even know why I'm arguing this point. But I don't know. I guess I'm nervous about it because I wonder too if like I wonder if there's something about accepting something without understanding the underlying that might make you cling to it more. In a way, like because it's so fragile, you have to protect it more in a way. And I just think too, like people who are, it kind of goes back to being challenged, and like so many people who are on the left don't have their worldview challenged, whether that's intentional or not. They might never have to confront it, and or they don't want to confront it, right? So they shy away from debate or confrontation or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I won't say too much on that because I'm just making this up. But I hope that's true. But I worry that it's not necessarily true.
I don't think it's true for everyone, but there are people for whom it is true. You know what I mean?
Well, and I should say I'm generally optimistic. So even though I say all this, I still do. I think even people who are clinging onto it for dear life and might be resistant still can eventually move past these things, challenge them, whatever. Because again, I mean, I just think of myself, like I was in so deep. I believed it so sincerely and ferociously, and I felt like such a good person. Can't like underestimate that part of it too. And still I was able to change. But like I said in the beginning, it took like me being hurt really to change and to start to question these things.
Yeah. I think that's, but that's normal for, however we get there, we get there.
Right.
I think that's like, echoed in a lot of people's experiences. So, but I'm not sure. Like I guess I try and make sense of like how it all happened. Do you know what I mean? Or how we got here, or like what led us to the place that like everybody was so willing to like jump off a bridge together, like collectively, societally. And I have no idea how that happened. I'm still trying to piece that together and see where to go from here, you know? And part of trying to figure that out is like, you know, trying to figure out what next and how to, I don't know, what do we do to, you know, try and make things better, or try and like promote, you know, some kind of, I want to say some kind of solution, or, you know.
Yeah. Well, no, and this is stuff I think about too. And it's hard because there's a few different routes of, I guess, theoretical things that could be done to try to turn the ship, and also things that are kind of happening. So you have the heavy hand, like the Trump administration, right? Like Trump being elected and then being able to come in and just literally do executive orders to change some of the woke stuff, right? Like ending DI in federal bureaucracies, and stuff with like gender transition, right? Moving to illegalize youth medical interventions, the sports stuff, all of that. So there's like the heavy hand of it, which does work in that sense, because it can be immediate and like top down.
Yeah.
That also just like fuels the opposition, right? That especially because, and I was saying this on Ryan Mullally's stream yesterday, so many people on the left, back to the mental illness, they're mentally ill and they're doing all these things because they actually believe their life is in danger. They believe they're going to die.
Yeah.
Worst of all, they believe they're going to die like via murder by their neighbor. And by neighbor, I mean like their fellow countrymen, you know, even if not their literal neighbor. So people are like really, really wound up about this stuff, and disproportionately so. They are not accurately see. This country is not dangerous for trans people. Do trans people sometimes get targeted and hurt and whatever? Yes, as do gay people, as do straight people, as do black people, as do white people. Right? There is no trans genocide. Point blank, period, end of. Even with Trump's, you know, all of these things, it's just not happening. But when that stuff happens, it does feed the mental illness of the person who believes they're being genocided, right? So on the one hand, it's like this immediate top-down thing that can tangibly change some of these things, at least the way that they are manifest, if not the ideas themselves. But that also, I think, fuels it too. Like, so if that takes it away in some segment of the population, maybe the people who weren't so attached to it just kind of absorbed it culturally, like it takes you know, some of it off maybe in that segment of the population, but not for the people who are really deep into it. It's having those people are then digging their heels in, and it's confirmation for them. They've been telling everyone that the government was, you know, is trying to deperson them and force detransition them, and then they're like, see, now here's the proof. So that's the one way. A second way is more naturally occurring, which is just it becomes so ubiquitous that it's no longer cool. And what becomes transgressive is to like be against this stuff. You know, it becomes transgressive to be the one kid in your class, the one guy who's like, no, I'm not a they them, right? I'm just a he him, you know, I'm a man, I'm a boy. That becomes transgressive, and I'm hopeful about that, because that seems transcendent, like generationally transcendent. There's just a coolness, there's an ick, there's like this thing that we all have, right? Especially younger people. And I remember seeing this with the trans stuff, like I remember seeing a couple anecdotes of families where like they kind of helped snap their daughter out of it when like dad decided that he was gonna, you know, he was gonna take on a trans identity too, or whatever, you know, or when they start seeing their teachers do it, it like suddenly becomes really uncool to them. And so that I'm hopeful about it. That's a much slower process, you know. That's not, we don't have control over that process. But that's a pretty cool process, and I think that's already happening. I think that's going to continue to happen. It's just going to become less cool. Being trans was transgressive, absolutely, for a long time, and being just gender bendy, not even, you know, just all of these things were transgressive. They're not anymore. They're becoming very cringe. They're hyper commercialized, right? So that's another, I guess.
Yeah, I think I can see that happening with young people slowly. Like we're not fully there, but like I see the winds starting to shift within the for the teenagers a bit. So
and then in terms of like how did we get here? Again, I don't have any really profound answers, but what do they say? Like hard times create strong men.
Yeah.
Strong men create
good
easy
time.
I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we're in easy times, right? And so it's like there's a thing that I bring a lot of this stuff back to the gender stuff just because I think it's like the most illustrative example from all of the woke stuff. But there are like people who've said this about the gender stuff, and I think being trans is not just one thing. A lot of people misunderstand like what is like the motivating factor behind transition. But for a certain segment of these people, certainly it's like they just didn't have time to think, to sit there and like introspect in this way. You know what I mean? And like people have to like go out and like work and like protect themselves and their families, right? And so there's something about just like the incredible privilege of living in the modern West, which of course the people on the left would never conceptualize it in that way. But there's something about that like we have time for all of these petty ideologies.
For now.
For now.
Yeah.
And I guess also in terms of just changing things moving forward, I know you and I have spoken a little bit about Peter Boghossian and our mutual admiration for his work. And it's funny, I was thinking about that, like, and so I think we need more of that. And that's not explicitly anti-woke, like the street epistemology stuff. And for people who don't know, Peter Boghossian, he's a former college professor. He was part of the grievance studies, the fake publications, fake experiments that him, James Lindsay, and Helen Pluckrose did several years back.
Yeah.
But he goes out now. I mean, he's got a podcast. He does lots of things. But he does this thing that he calls street epistemology. I don't even know if he coined it, but where he goes out on the street and he sets up little points on the ground, you know, neutral, agree, disagree, strongly disagree, and brings strangers and or non-strangers, whatever, brings people together with prompts and has people go line themselves up on the line that they most closely align with for their answer, and just has people think about the way they think.
Yeah.
Right.
Interrogate their beliefs. Yeah.
Exactly. Thinking. And epistemology, right? It's like, where do these things come from? So he's getting people to think about where their thoughts come from and how their confidence level in these things too. Right. And I think that is like, I'm thinking like, maybe I should start doing something like that, you know, just like out in public where I live. The activist in me can't die even when I leave the left, apparently. I just like need to go out on the street, apparently. But just like, because so much, this is another thing I wanted to talk about. I always have my head always goes in a million different directions, but so much of the problem that we find ourselves in and what led to the overflowing of woke is the self-censorship.
Yeah.
And people just not wanting to say the wrong thing, not wanting to get in trouble, not wanting to hurt anyone. Like those two things get conflated too. It's like, it's not just not wanting to get yelled at. It's also people want to be good people. They don't want to hurt people. They don't want to say the wrong thing. Right. And so all of these things together, people don't talk. And when you don't talk, you don't think. Like these things just are, they are related in this very literal way. And so I think more of what Peter does of just like, because he'll ask controversial-ish questions, not always in the most controversial way. And he'll say it just very matter-of-factly, and he can argue any side, and he very often will. And just get people to talk about things that are a little uncomfortable and get them to think about how they're thinking.
Yeah.
Because like you said, and like I said, so much of our process was just like actually being curious in how other people think, right? And actually trying to understand different ideologies and different orientations about the world. And that's a muscle that needs to be exercised. And so schools, that, like, what an easy thing for schools to be able to implement is this street epistemology, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's more of that kind of thing for sure. Yeah. And lately I've been thinking, I think, like, I don't know how to get here, but I really want to get to the post-tribal world, the post-tribal politics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Depolarization. Like, how do we do that? Like, how do we, bring things down a little bit, or how do we like build bridges to people, or get people to want to build bridges? I don't even think it's like people like you and I who might be like willing to do that or wanting to do that, but like, how do you move people to a place where they're wanting to do that? How do you you know what I mean? Like, how do you highlight for people that there's a better way? Because there is something exhausting about it too. There is something exhausting about that type of, I don't know, like high stakes all the time, life or death, no matter, you know what I mean, type of like political thinking.
Yeah, it's hypervigilance. It is this high alert all the time. And then, like you said, high stakes too.
Yeah.
Everything is just.
Yeah. And the right is doing this too. Yeah.
Yes.
And the right is the right is doing plenty of this now too.
Yes.
And that's just like, okay, like, so there's no home there, and there's I don't know if there's a home. Like, I don't know where they're gonna land right now. Like, I'm unsure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like a super, I don't know, like a place I want to spend a lot of time in either at the moment,
Right.
With where some of it's going.
No, I get that. I'm cautiously waiting and watching to see what's going to happen. I see some things that I think are good in terms of, like, I see some big names, some, not all, not enough.
Yeah.
Some big name, mainstream, traditional conservative or conservatives or people on the right who are pushing back on what they see as like the explosion of the crazies on their side and still trying to police decency, right? Not censor, but like hold a high standard for yourself and the people you surround yourself with, right? And so I see some of that happening on the right in ways that I don't see happening on the left and haven't seen in the last however many years, right? Like the left has just, in my opinion, still won't, in just an infuriating way. Even people who will like kind of acknowledge that this stuff contributed, they won't blame Kamala's loss on it, but even the people who will acknowledge that it contributed to Kamala's loss still conceptualize it as like, because the bigots care a lot about that and not because we went fucking crazy. Like there is no reflection of like, maybe we got some of this stuff wrong. It's just we shouldn't talk about it so much now because the bigots are really obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not. So I'm more, I don't know, it's hard. I'm more optimistic about the right in that way, I guess, but also the right's problems in some ways are bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. I think, and I think like there's a lot of talk, I guess I'd say there's a lot of talk about like how, I guess, on some issues, the left and the right are far apart, but on some issues they're not terribly far apart. So there is a lot of like polarization, or it feels very polarized.
Mhm.
But on some issues there is overlap, and people do come closer together on some things, you know. But then I'd say like on effective polarization, like on like how people perceive the other side, whether they want to spend time with people who are on the other side, whether they would be happy if their child married somebody on the other side. That type of polarization is very, very high, even if
Yeah.
on some of the more policy type of thing that there isn't
People aren't
as
so far apart.
huge. Yeah. So it's become in a lot of ways, well, I think the policy and stuff does matter, but it's a very large cultural problem that's being
Mhm.
kind of played out through politics. You know,
Yeah.
politics is part of it. And then part of it is just like the culture, and it's like politics is the vehicle on how it's like expressing itself, you know.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And it's obviously it's really unfortunate because I think even in the places where they are policy wise pretty far apart, those don't need to be like consequential in who you talk to and get along with and have over your house, or who you would want your kids to date or something like that.
Yeah.
And I say all that because I think you are right. Like there is a lot of overlap, especially like the smaller you get. Maybe you go down to like a state level, right? Or a local level. And like when the problems are sort of ubiquitous in that way, then yeah, everyone's noticing them, and everyone, you know, everyone sees them, everyone wants to solve those problems. But like, yeah, even the things that are like different, you know, like when I was listening to a Cenk, I always say his fucking name wrong. Cenk. I think his name is Cenk. Cenk was being interviewed by like one of like the Kamala staffers or something, whatever, some like DNC strategist guy. And it was just a throwaway line. He was just like talking about like what the Democrats stand for, what the left stands for. And I'm just like, I don't stand for that stuff. And it was, you know, it was like, you know, like Medicaid for all, and increasing the minimum wage, and like all of this stuff. And I know that makes me sound like the crazy person. Like, you don't want to increase minimum wage? Like, well, no. I think like I think I understand the need for some regulations and like safe work practices, but actually I do think that there are market solutions to almost all of these things. Create a better work environment and people are going to want to come work for you. Also, like not every businesses have crazy different margins, right? Like, so what works for one business owner, one type of business, is not going to work for another type of business. And so like some of these things I just don't agree with, but that's not the end of the fucking world. And by the way, like I just illustrated in this small example, I'm not against raising the minimum wage because I don't want people to live good lives and get paid fairly, right? I think it perverts the incentive structures and the market forces, basically. I think it's an unfair hand that's going to hurt businesses that are trying to provide for themselves and their community and stuff like this. But that's the reason, right? Like it's not because I'd want people to suffer.
Yeah.
But these things are, even that has become, I mean, there are people on the left who think that if you're against raising minimum wage, you are a bad person. They even talk that way about the other people on the left who don't make that their number one policy priority, right? This played out on Live and Learn for like weeks on end, right? Like Biden didn't even care and didn't even try and didn't even push it and whatever. Yeah, we are so damn polarized. And you're right, some of these things the politics or the policies just become like the stand-in for just like how we feel about the other person. And that actually, I'm saying this like it's some revelation, but of course it's obviously true. We've seen this with the negative polarization of the woke stuff, by the way. In my opinion, a lot of the reason that the woke stuff really spiraled out of control is because people tripled down just to oppose the Republicans. So some type of woke thing would happen, right? transition for kids. Okay. Okay. You can call that whatever thing that is. Okay, let's use this as an example, right? So you have transition for kids. Then you have Republicans coming in and saying, whoa, we think that's totally wrong. We're going to now push for legislation in our state to make this illegal for anyone under 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then the left responds to that by saying, okay, well, we're going to make our state a sanctuary state. So now kids from any state in the union can come here and under 18 can get their, can start their transition, their medical transition. And so I feel like that, and maybe that's even like not an extreme enough example, but there's so much like that where, and this happens on both sides. The right gets negatively polarized like this too.
Yeah.
Whatever the other side is doing, you have to just take the opposite. You have to take the opposite. You have to go further, right?
Yeah. And it's like fundamentally, if you don't agree with this solution, it's for all the worst reasons. So if you don't want to increase minimum wage, it's because you hate minimum wage workers, or you're just so pro greedy capitalist corporations to make all of the money, and you don't care about the worker, and fuck them, and you're a bad person. And if you don't agree with rent control, it's because you want to only take care of landlords and, building owners, and
you want to gentrify these neighborhoods. You don't care about POC. Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the fact that, like, no, I care about these things. It's just I don't see the solution you're proposing as going to achieve what you want. And I think that the downstream effects are possibly worse. And I think that we should do something different or try something else. And I think one of the fundamental changes I had in my disposition to lean, I guess what would be more conservative, is like, yes, I still want changes. I don't want them to happen fast. Like, I think change needs to happen incrementally a lot of times and slowly, and you need to make smaller changes and adjust and wait and see what happens, and make sure you're all of the unintended effects and impacts, and to account for them. Because in the last little while, it seems like there have been many, many changes, and lots of things kind of got caught up in the, you know what I mean? Like as a side effect of it. And now people are fighting about, like, people want to roll things back, and then it becomes very difficult to do that. Once you've taken things so far in a certain direction.
I think that's really wise. And again, that is something that especially people on the, I call it far left, but frankly, it's just like progressive, which is not that far left, I don't think, anymore. Like, there are a lot of kind of mainstream people on the left who are progressive. But that incrementalism, there are people on the left who are just really opposed to that, because they see it as a way to shirk responsibility, and they see it as, just like you said, just like continuing to help the people at the top and not the people at the bottom. So their idea, and I remember this from when I was a radical, was that, you can't reform, you need to abolish all of these systems, right? Because if you abolish them, if you help the lowest person, right, then it brings everyone above them with it. But if you start, if you do this incremental reformist approach, you're only helping some of these people and then some of these people, and you leave everyone below it. And it's like, I get that's compelling, like, in a vacuum, right? And especially, again, if you're like reaching at people's heartstrings, who want to help people, who are compassionate and want to help vulnerable people, which these people often that they're talking about are. But to your point, that the two reasons to say sorry doesn't matter, we still need to go incrementally here, is twofold. It's like you said, is so that we can actually, in some scientific way, like, hi, the left, if we want to be the we believe in science people, right? You need a time to be able to test your hypothesis and then see what happens, collect some data, like you said, make sure that there aren't all of these unintended consequences that were totally unforeseen, make sure that it's actually benefiting people, that it's benefiting the people that you wanted it to benefit, all of these things. So that's the first reason. The second reason is for buy-in also, like you're saying. things need to be incremental so that you can get people to agree to it. And, you know, again, with people on the left complaining, we need to get rid of the filibuster. This is hyper American, but we need to get rid of the filibuster because we're never going to have 60 votes again. And then we can't get anything passed. And it's like, well, maybe there was some wisdom in the way that that was set up, that you should have to basically only be able to pass things that you guys can agree upon. That is not going to be so scary that you can get at least, you know, at least some people from the other side to buy into your vision and to feel comfortable with your vision and your plan. So I think, yeah, for the purposes of buy-in and like quality assurance, right? Actually testing what you're doing. Yeah, those are reasons to be pro reform and pro incrementalism.
Yeah.
But that's also not, that's not sexy.
No. And the farther left doesn't want, they don't want that. They want revolution. Right. You know, they want to tear it all down and build it back better. And I used to want to tear it all down and build it back better. And then I realized that the chances of building everything back better is very slim. And there are many more ways that it goes completely wrong than we end up with anything that we would like remotely consider better than what we have now. Right. And even if we did, the amount of chaos and destruction that would take to get there, like, it seems like a very high price to pay. Now, could it be worth it if we reached utopia? Possibly. I don't know if you can reach utopia like on the, you know, millions of, you know, dead people, but who knows? There could be some arguments for there if we got there. But I just don't think I've seen people. I'm old enough now to have seen human nature like enough times to know that like this way that the left sees the world and the world that they want to create does not exist. They cannot even create it among themselves.
Well, like, no, correct. And this actually just occurred to me. And it's a little petty maybe, but I don't even mean it to be. This just literally occurred to me live. Speaking of utopia, right? And thinking about, you know, the people on the left who talk about material conditions, that's part of why they think utopia will work, right? Is that they have decided that essentially like we can draw like clear lines, right, for everything. And so if people have food and housing and you know, and whatever, all of these, and healthcare and all of these things, if all of their material needs are met, then people will thrive and will succeed, right? That is how they describe when people aren't thriving and succeeding, right? Is that there's some type of impediment. There's something that's blocking them from getting their material needs met. They use this in a more extreme example to talk about like terrorism and stuff all of the time, right? Everything is just just a direct reaction to the material conditions of their lived experience, blah, 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 blah. These are the same people who believe in the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the brain model of depression, basically, that some people just like have chemical imbalances and stuff. So it's like, okay, well, hold on. So maybe, and now I have complicated feelings about all this stuff too. Like I think a lot of depression can and should be treated essentially with like behavioral activation. Like there's a lot that you can do to like change people's circumstances to really improve their mood when we're talking about mood disorders. But I do also believe that, put people in the lap of luxury and they can still be anxious and depressed. Like we are just the human condition. We almost think we're too smart for ourselves sometimes, right? Because it's like, it's like, oh, silly. Like people can be unhappy anywhere in any circumstance, right? And there'll always be like something to perseverate on, and like we're never going to. So that seems like a contradiction that just occurred to me. It's like, how do we even reach utopia, especially if you guys that's a contradiction in their worldview. It's both that all of these things, because when you see a mentally ill person commit a heinous crime and the people on the right say that person should have been locked up, well, they talk about all of the things in their life that like led them to this. But don't you also believe that it's essentially out of their control and like some genetic or chemical imbalance, basically? How do you even hold those two things together? If it is a chemical or genetic imbalance, then euthanasia sounds like the right answer, right? It's like, obviously not. I'm being, I'm
I'm
being dramatic, but yeah, it's like how they there's not a lot of interrogation.
I think that like I'm not sure if the best argument, but one of the arguments would be it's like, well, we're living in like late stage capitalism, so all of these things that, you know what I mean, like the environment and the world around us is so sick that like even people who have their material conditions like all of those needs met are still in an environment where they're exposed to and living amongst suffering, and that you know what it would just, and that will impact them, and until we achieve the true utopia, then you'll see. But that's just kind of like how I see that gets like responded to, but it doesn't make sense because it's not meant to, it's not meant to really make sense. It's meant to just sound nice. It's unfalsifiable. Like we can't, sure, maybe, but it's also like impossible. So next, please, let's try a real world solution.
And also, when you're always, this also just occurred to me, it feels revelatory. I'm confident that I'm not the first person to come to this conclusion. But like, it actually makes sense when you look at these different dispositions, left versus right, and like quality of life and depression and anxiety rates, which these things are, even if it's because like you were saying earlier, the people on the left are kind of identifying into these things, and that is definitely part of it. But the liberals have significantly higher rates of mental illness. That might mean that they're more likely to go to a therapist and get a diagnosis and get medication, all these things. Those things are true also. But that doesn't mean that the people on the right are just suffering in silence and all like committing suicide at home, right? That's also like not what's happening, right? Because when you are so focused on utopia and making everything better, you do not appreciate just how good things are now. And that is like a spiritual way of looking at the world, and something that I take from like different like Jewish and sort of like Kabbalistic practices too. And again, these are like golden rule things, like every day take stock of what you're grateful for. That actually improves your quality of life and your mental health, just like that, a small thing like that. And it's hard to do that when you need to sell in order to convince people, to galvanize people to get behind your cause, you need to catastrophize. You need to tell them how horrible everything is so that they are motivated to make these changes. And so you're living in that. You're stewing in that, in how horrible everything is, which again, in my opinion, makes you, it's bad for your own mental health. It's bad for the mental health, but for everyone around you. And it's not rooted. That's the privileged take, actually. It's not rooted in reality. Like, just go back 50 years even, let alone 100 years, let alone 150 years. Like, we're living in the most incredible time to be a human on Earth, basically. And Parker, sorry, my dog is like scratching on the couch. I can hear her. Stop. But yeah, I mean, that's a problem. And it is like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy there. You catastrophize so that people will care and will get on your team, and then like everything is terrible to you then, because that's the world you're living in.
Yeah, and there's like such a lack of agency in it. Like, I think that's just it's just such a good way to get stuck. And I think like stoicism and just kind of like having agency and really realizing that like all of the shit in my life is mine, for better or worse. It's like terrifying, but it was like the best thing, because if my life sucks, it's because of me. And that's the good news, because
we can choose how we react. Even that was a mind-blowing thing when I heard like the first Stoic that speak, again back in like the summer of 2021, or it might have been like the winter right at the end of the year. Yeah, right. Just like and internalizing that's actually empowering, right? Is like I get to, even on down to the level of reaction, I do get to control how I react to this. Doesn't make it fair, doesn't make it good, whatever. I am in control of these things. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a total flip. People want to be in control of things that they have no control over, and then take no agency over the things that they have full control over in their lives.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, giving up being able to control other people, other things, and all of that, and just like, you know, taking, your agency and controlling your reactions or your responses, or how much time and energy and how much thought you're going to give to something.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, there's something really, um, I don't know, it just makes you better. It just makes you feel better. It just makes you approach life in a, like, in a, I don't want to say happier, because that's like kind of like a shallow emotion, if you will, but like a more
Right.
contented way, you know what I mean? As opposed to this like angry. So it's less angry, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I love that you said that too, because I think when I've tried to define happiness before, I do think contentedness, right? This just being more or less content.
Yeah.
Is the healthiest way to view that. This just goes back to conversations I've had with my sister when she was having like mental health crises, and she'd always, talk to me about this being happy. And I remember having a conversation with her of like, I don't know if we're talking about, if we're defining this word the same way, like, I don't know what kind of happiness you're looking for, right? If it's like this, like ecstasy and like level 10 joy and excitement, that's not reality. That's not life. Right.
Yeah.
That's a tangent, but yeah,
No,
cool. I like where this conversation went.
yeah, me too. But wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in it. I think we have a lot of good strands for us to pull from in our next conversation.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. We can keep going and try and figure it all out one conversation at a time.
Yeah. And eventually we'll get this thing live.
Yeah, we will try next time. We had some tech issues.
Yeah.
And where can people find you, Tally?
At Talibots, TALIBOTZ on Twitter and YouTube.
Okay. And you can find me at Morally Loaded on YouTube, or at Not in Line on X.
Great name, Morally Loaded. Very excited about your channel name.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
All right. See you later. Have a good night.
See ya.